Welcome to the Man Up God's Way podcast, a show that dives into the real, raw, and relevant issues for men and their faith, life, and community. Now, your host, Jody Burkeen.
Monday podcast, and I am your host, Jody Burkeen. I'm excited to be here tonight. I've got a special guest that I'll introduce here in just a second, but man, we are moving and grooving. The podcast is blowing up the charts, and we thank you all for taking the opportunity to listen to us. If you would, share this on your feed. Let everybody know about Man Up Podcast, Man Up Monday Podcast, and Man Up God's Way, and take an opportunity just to share this, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. Make sure that you subscribe to our channels as well, so you can catch these every Monday night. And we are praying about doing a Theological Thursday. I think that's what I'm going to call it. How's that sound? Does that sound good? All right. I got my co-host, Ben Neely, in the background here today. How you doing, Ben?
Doing good.
I'm glad you're here, dude.
Glad to be here.
Good. Man, you're looking good. You lost a ton of weight, dude. I'm proud of you.
I got 40 to go, though, so I'm not where I need to be. But
yeah, but you got 40 off, right?
Yeah.
Holy cow, dude. You look good.
It's getting warm enough now I can exercise, too, so that'll help.
Okay.
I was just doing
fair-weathered exercise guy?
Yeah, fair weather.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't blame you. Yeah. I'm just no exercise. That's my problem. I just don't like exercise. Yeah. Well, good, man. You're looking good. I was looking at our very first podcast. I think I sent you the picture of you over there. Holy cow. You've lost a ton of weight just since then.
Yeah. It's been I think it's 27 pounds, and it was 16 pounds before that. So
that's
it's
awesome.
43 total.
That's awesome. There you go. Yeah, exactly.
You guys upgraded me. Put Ben next to me.
Say cheese.
We're doing good.
That's awesome.
I'm classing up the back today.
Yes, you are. Yeah, we got a special guest here, so we wanted to give her as much room as we possibly could. How's the album going?
It's going good, man. I've been pushing hard for 2 weeks. Feeling like I'm bugging everybody online, just posting about it, but I love it, man. It's going good. So we're getting some traction. And I'm really going to start hitting it hard here in the next month.
Are you? Okay. So what's hitting hard? What are you talking about hitting hard?
So unfortunately, it just takes a lot of money to, market stuff. And so
I have one of those trees in my backyard. Don't you have that?
We're going to have to get one.
Yeah.
So just, some paid ads. I got to shoot a music video for it. That's going to cost some money. And, it's almost pointless doing a song without a music video nowadays.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I want to play it. Here, hold on just 1 second. Let me give you another plug here. You got to listen to this song. This is good right here. So, guys, this is Fregosa, and the song is called Drunk.
I get drunk to get less lonely. A little more sad.
Oh, that's it.
That's
it. That's all I got. You gave me I got the wrong one there, but that's one of my.
I appreciate the love.
I jam that song all the time. I hope you're getting paid on the Spotify stuff.
Oh man, Spotify's pretty rough.
Oh, are they okay?
Yeah, it's about a penny, half a penny a play or something like that. But you get the music out there, and I have got. This is actually one of the most encouraging things, and the reason why I write. I had a lady reach out to me and said, "Hey, I heard your song. It moved me. I needed to hear it to keep going."
That's awesome, dude.
Okay, perfect. That's that's the only reason I write. So
let's go here.
Even though it's hard to sleep, it's hard to dream, it's hard to breathe.
I love that song. That is so good. I see me on the piano singing it, and I can't sing a lick,
Waking in the morning, pressure feeling.
All right, folks, that's Fregosa and his new song, Drunk. Go get it today. It's on all the channels that you can possibly get it on. It's good stuff.
Appreciate the love, brother.
Man, I'm proud of you. It's good to have you and be able to promote that stuff. What's up, Mr. Rusty?
Doing good. I'm going to lean way over here.
There you go.
I guess I get in the picture.
There you go. Glad you're here, man.
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm glad you're here, dude.
Good.
Rusty will be back there doing all of our commentating on our Facebook pages as well as our YouTube. So if you guys have a question tonight as we talk to our special guest here in just a moment, please feel free to ask. Again, share it. And in order for us to pay for this podcast, we're going to promote just a few things real quick. This is my favorite coffee in the world right here. It's the Man Up coffee. You can get this on manupmerch.com. It is extremely good. And got a mug here to go along with it, as well as this one right here. So make sure you get it, as well as some cool T-shirts and hats. So that's how we pay for this podcast, and you get to look cool while you're doing it too. So I appreciate that. Quick news: we've got our app coming out in about 2 weeks. The new Man Up God's Way app is going to be a community app where we are going to be able to get together, much like Facebook, but better than Facebook, because nobody is going to take our stuff down from there. So it's really excited to be on iTunes as well as Google Play coming up here in the next 2 weeks. We'll be watching for that, and we're going to launch that as soon as possible. In Troy, Missouri. It is a faith-based recovery center. One of the things that it's really, man, it just gets my heart every time. I love dealing with recovery people, addicts. It seems like God sends those to me all the time, and so I have the opportunity to deal with quite a few in my ministry, and I'm excited to talk to these guys and see how Man Up can come along inside of them and help them. So it's going to be a good podcast.
Good stuff.
Yeah, it is. I love talking about, I love seeing stories of people going from just what we would think would be rock bottom, which typically is rock bottom, to a place to where they're praising Jesus and just loving on him again. So I'm excited about that. So make sure you check us out next week, Monday, 8 o'clock, every single Monday. Central Time, by the way. So I'm excited tonight. We have something special tonight. We have a special guest here, Jess Clark, who is here in the studios. Jess, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, man, I'm doing good tonight. I'm doing good every night. I can't even lie.
That's great.
Life is good.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. So why this is so special is because Jess in our community is actually running for the school board, the Rockwood School Board. As a matter of fact, the vote is tomorrow.
Oh,
So you've done all your campaigning, correct?
I have.
Okay.
I have. This is the last stop for me.
This is the last stop?
This is it.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
we're gonna make it good.
We want all of our folks in the St. Louis area to make sure that you share this podcast and the live feed right now, so people can hear her story. We're going to talk a lot about her story, what her passion is, why she wanted to get into, I guess what we call it, politics, the politics of the school system, maybe.
Yeah. As much as we don't like the fact that it is politics, it is.
Unfortunately, it is. I wish it was just educating our children, but unfortunately, it's become a political stance as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I'm really excited about that. We've got a couple of people that we're really pushing for. Not only you, but Izzy. Are you guys running against each other, or
no,
you guys okay?
We are not. We are hand in hand. We're hoping to fill the 2 seats. There are 2 seats this year, and there are 5 people on the ballot. So just a reminder, we are number 3 and 4 on the ballot, and that's who we want to vote for.
All right. So tomorrow's vote in the Rockwood School District in the St. Louis area is 3 and 4. Jess Clark and Izzy, and what's her last name?
Izzy Emick.
Izzy Emick, okay. Some folks that we want on the school board. And we're going to talk about why we need this kind of voice on the school board here in just a minute. But Jess, I've got some friends who just love you to death. Miss Lindsay, who is your biggest cheerleader, I think, out in the community right now, loves you to death. Matter of fact, I saw her today, and she just ranted and raved about you again, and couldn't wait till we got you on here. But what I want to hear first is really your story. I've read a little bit on the website. I heard some from Lindsay, and I'm very intrigued about where you came from to how you got here. Won't you start with the
We're gonna start young.
Let's start.
We're gonna start young.
Okay.
So I grew up, born and raised in St. Louis, in the city, in West St. Louis, if anybody is familiar, like near Delmar and Kings Highway on a street called Cabany. I grew up with my great-grandparents. So I got to my great-grandparents' house when I was 6 weeks. My sister was 5, my brother was 3.
Oh,
My
wow.
great-grandparents were 67 and 77,
Okay.
raising 3 kids under
Holy
5.
cow.
My mother spent 17 years in prison.
Okay.
My father, 10 years in prison on and off. So that's how we ended up with my grandparents. And I actually recently just heard some more about the story. I recently found out that my father, that I call my father, who I talk to often, is not my father. I have a
Okay.
different dad than my siblings, and I actually was put up for adoption originally because my dad was an alcoholic and he was abusive to her. And so
wow.
she didn't want me to be in that environment because, you know, it's like, I don't want you to suffer under the hand of a man that's not your father. Put me up for up for adoption.
Okay.
I had drugs in my system, so the adoption didn't go through. They didn't want me.
Okay.
So that's how I ended up with my grandparents, with my siblings.
So is this how your mom and dad, the guy you call dad, are they? Is that how they ended up in prison? Was drugs?
No,
Okay.
no. My mother ended up in prison. I think the initial charge was armed robbery. So she had a couple of armed
Okay.
robbery charges. And then, so she got to the prison in Kinloch. They were about to take her to wherever they were taking her. She ended up having sex with one of the security guards and escaping.
Oh,
So
wow.
she got more time for that. So she ended up with 17 years in the Chillicothe prisons.
Okay.
She got home about 9 years ago.
Okay.
She drunk herself to death about a year ago.
No kidding.
Yep,
Ugh,
yep.
I'm
So
sorry to
we'll
hear that.
we'll get into that
Okay.
story later because there's a whole story in there about forgiveness,
Okay.
about
Amen.
the journey of forgiving her,
Right.
and you know the process of going through that and how much that freed me,
Okay.
and how that kind of built me into who I am today. So growing up was interesting. My sister was 5,
Okay.
so she suffered more than any of us, and
Mm.
this is all in retrospect. Because growing up, she was physically abusive to us and my grandparents. She would,
Okay.
she would pull out knives. She would beat us up. I would go to school with black eyes. But she was also sexually abusive to me,
Okay.
which I'm just now coming to grips with the fact that was incest. I was reading a book about trauma, and they were talking about
Right.
incest. And you don't think about that as like, girl on girl. It's like, no,
Right.
that's not, it was. And
Yeah.
so, again, there was a forgiveness process with her because as a kid, it's like, I hate this girl. She's beating us up. She's doing all these strange things. This is weird. But then I had to step back and say, you were 5. Like, the amount of trauma, you had your
Right.
parents taken away. You got put into this new environment. So she was abusive to us and the teachers at school. Like, she would
Right.
go to school and beat up the teacher. So there was a lot of trauma growing up. The cops were always at our house. There was trauma for me that I didn't realize. I would go to school. Nobody knew my parents were in prison. I always had this thing about me of wanting to be different. I don't want to, I went to public school.
Right.
Everybody had trauma, and I didn't realize it. But it's like, I don't want anybody to know. And if your life is a mess, then we're not the same, and I don't want you to be near me. I had this, like, superiority complex as a kid. It was very strange. So I would make up these stories. Like, my mother had this elaborate personality. I would talk about how she said certain words. We lived on a private street in the Central West End, which was not true. So I had this whole imaginary life. And, again, later on in life, I struggled with my identity because, again,
Right.
I never accepted who I was because I didn't know who I was.
Do you think that was your way of just, sweeping everything under the carpet?
Yes,
Yeah.
that was
when
me.
you look back at it now.
That was me
Yeah.
coping. That was
Yeah.
me trying, that's not things that we talk about. And my grandmother hid a lot of things and she made, which I didn't realize
Right.
again until later. She wanted everything to look perfect instead of actually dealing with the situations that we had. It's like,
Right.
oh no, if we just sweep it under the rug and nobody sees it, then maybe it'll go away and nobody will know.
Now, was your older sister, was she sexually abused too?
More than likely.
Yeah,
more
she's
than
never
likely.
said,
She
okay.
never said, and
Okay.
I've never mentioned it to
Okay.
her that because it came back as a memory, and I had to call a cousin that I remember being a part of it, saying, "Do you remember that, or am I tripping?" And she's like, "No, that happened."
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I don't think she's ready to deal with that. You have to allow people. She has to live with that. She knows. I'm sure she has her own trauma that she's still dealing with, and for me to try to bring that up, for what reason? That
Right.
it won't help her. I've already dealt with it myself, and
Right.
I love her the best way that I can because I understand that you were neglected for sure, probably molested, who knows, but you are a product of your environment. You
Right.
you weren't born that way, you were created. And
Right.
so again, forgiveness, just
Yeah.
having
Amen.
empathy, learning to understand how did you become this way, how
Right.
did so yeah, there was trauma. She brother was 3. He has a lot more chaos in his life than I do. She has the most, he's in the middle, and I really I had my own struggles, but it was nothing compared to the things that they dealt with. So that's why I'm so passionate about being a parent, because I know somebody loving you and validating you. So I see that with my siblings, and so I fight for my kids now. The trauma with my sister, that was one thing, but she was also very sexually active, so I was exposed to a lot. And so, which created 15, pregnant by a 21-year-old man. had no business doing that. But again, my grandfather he was a great man, the kindest man. He was, graduated from Howard University, taught 7 when I was 6 weeks old. So as I was growing up and I needed male validation. I needed my grandfather. I need somebody to be there. I didn't really have that. My grandmother was always there trying to, make sure he had a lot of health problems. So of course, 15, pregnant by this 21-year-old man, ended up getting an abortion. That's what my grandmother thought was the best thing to do. You can't raise this baby. I'm not going to help you. Your grandfather's dying. I'm trying to raise you. So, yeah, so it was just crazy. And even thinking about Lutheran school, I was a member of a Lutheran church. I was babysitting. So, I've been in church most of my life. My great-grandmother raised me, but my grandmother also lived with us most. She didn't really, she was, so my relationship with church has always been strange because I knew she just went because it was a social club and she wanted to eat. And she would take us to these strange churches where they like screaming and throwing themselves on the floor because my piano teacher was Lutheran. And I love Lutheran church. I would read the scripture. I would play the piano. It was great. And I ended up with a babysitting job from the only white couple in the congregation. This is a Lutheran church in North over to the north side, but I ended up babysitting for this couple. Great couple. They lived in Soulard, had a beautiful house. It was amazing. I was like, this is a different world than going to public. Interesting, but that turned into something very inappropriate. This guy started, he would teach me to drive, and you're young and naive. We're driving a stick, so he put his hand on mine. I thought, about this woman named Jessica. It reminds me of you. Okay, I don't know the song, but that's great. I'm gonna pick you up early, and my wife's not coming. It just got really weird, and then it went too far where he wanted to pay me for sex. Like, this is kind of strange. So again, all this over sexualization, all this nobody around to protect me. Still with the guy, that's power dynamic.
21 to 15, exactly.
Yes, so, emotional abuse, physical abuse, all kinds of abuse. Had an abortion, ended up pregnant again at 17, and that is my 14-year-old daughter that I have now.
Amen.
She changed the game in my life. So here I am, 17. What do you do? What do you do at 17? I ended up dropping out of school so I can work. I went back to school, got in his parents. I would work 40 hours a week. I would do, it was like an alternative school, and he would take my whole check. And I'm like, wait, I could be at my grandmother's house and at least keep my money. So it was a very rough time. There was one moment where I'd finally said, enough is enough. I'm tired of getting abused. And he was like, okay, I'm going to let you go. All right, cool. Calls me up one day and puts on this like sad story. It's Father's Day. I want to see my daughter. Father, I don't want to do that to my daughter. So he's like, okay, meet me at a hotel. I'm like, all right, it's kind of strange, but whatever. We get there, we're hanging out, the usual. We're drinking the whole 9. My daughter's probably less than 2 years old, maybe about to be 2, and maybe she's about to be 1. He keeps drinking, and eventually he like goes to the door, puts like the latch on, and was like, "You're not leaving."
Oh no!
I'm like, all right. This man beat me up for 2 days straight in front of my daughter.
No
Threatened
kidding.
to kill her. He would take her to the sink and say, I'm going to throw this radio in her and I'm going to kill her. And eventually, after like a day and a half, he just snapped out of it and was just like, you can leave. And she's screaming. It was horrible. I got home from that. I think I called a cab, got home, and my family, I told them what happened, and they said, I told you so. This is your fault. How could you? I felt so defeated and bad, and it was just no support that I lied, because I'm like, oh, you are stupid. How did you stay there? You can't tell these people that you just were there. You have to. So I lied. I was like, oh, he had a gun. Because that just made me feel good. So the case ended up getting dropped because it turns out he didn't have a gun. So now I was discredited. He walks free. But in the midst of that, this is a weird story. So when I got
you're
home.
17. It's not like
17.
It's not like you know
I
what
had
to
no
say
idea.
or how to say.
Yeah,
and
it's
easily.
In the moment, it's like, I don't want my kid to die. This man is crazy. He's going to kill us. Like, I have to stay or somebody's going to die. But that didn't seem valid. My family didn't make that seem like it was a valid excuse. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess we got to lie. But when I got home, just so happened my mother was calling from prison. And my grandmother told her what happened, and I'm telling you, within 4 hours, there was some old, short, white guy at my door with 2 other white guys with him with guns. Like, you need to tell me where this guy is.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do it. This man had just done horrible things to me, and that was like, wouldn't have he could have been gone just like that. He would.
So had you had a relationship with your mom?
My aunt used to take
Between
us
that
to
time?
see
Okay,
her
so-
every now and then.
So your
yeah.
relationship was between glass.
Yes. Well, I mean, not really, not glass. When we go up there, we
Oh,
got
you
to
got to
see.
see,
Yeah, we
okay,
got to
all right.
see her. But it was really phone calls, and she would write letters. She would send us gifts. She, I didn't notice it when I was younger, but she would have people come over and drop us off money and toys, and she made sure we were good. So it was just by divine intervention that she had called in that moment. I mean, I wouldn't have asked her to make that guy come up there,
Right,
but so here he is at the door, and he's just at you, But I even though this person was horrible, I'd gotten to know his story so much that it's like, I know why you are the way that you are. Your parents were abusive. They were abusive to each other. Excuse what you did, but I get it.
Right.
You're a product of your environment. You're loving me the way that your parents loved each other.
Right.
You think that's normal? So it's like, I didn't hate him, and I don't want you dead. So he's like, all right, you don't want to give it to me, whatever. Your mom wants me to take you to Kansas City. I go to Kansas City for probably a month because I was dealing with some PTSD. I was scared to leave the house.
Right.
I didn't know what to do. I wanted my daughter to be okay. Go up there. He takes me to these colleges, and he's like, you can come live with me. I'm like, good. He's like, you can go to nursing school. I'll pay for it. You're good. Your mom wants you good. Cool.
So this guy that just out of the blue
Just
shows
out of the
up,
blue,
he's
yeah.
gonna take care of you.
Yeah,
Okay.
my mom would always talk about him and stuff, and so I was familiar with his name. He would always bring us gifts and stuff from Kansas City. He's like, all right, so I stayed for a month. He brought me home, and it's like, pack your stuff. I'll be back in 3 days. He never showed up. I'm like, all right. My mom's angry, and it turns out he was a cross-dresser, and he didn't want me to live with him because he didn't want my mom to find out that he was
He's
a
a cross-dresser.
cross-dresser. It's like, this is ghetto. Like, and I'm only 17. Like, what is happening?
So we need to get a movie script for her.
I'm writing right now, bro.
Man.
Holy cow! No
Yeah,
kidding.
Yeah, and so even I got to see him. He came here for my mom's memorial, and I got to talk to him about his story and the abuse that he suffered and his relationship with his mother. And I think it was the uncle that was abusing him, and the bad relationship between the mom, because she would drop him off, again, a single mom.
Right.
She had to go to work, and she's knowingly dropping him off with a pedophile, but she has to go to work.
Right.
And so, there's resentment between him and the mom and the uncle, and it's just like everybody. That is how I'm able to forgive and just love people, because it's like you really just a product of your environment.
Everybody has a story.
Everybody has a story. You don't just wake up and be like, I'm gonna wear girls' clothes. Like, it's just like, no, there's
Right.
something that caused that. So yeah, he ended up, eventually coming out and saying that, and I'm like, okay, I get that, and I guess I'm just here and have to figure it out. So
you don't go to Kansas City.
Don't go to
okay,
Kansas
so
City.
you're sitting there waiting. He never shows up.
Yeah.
Years later you find out why. So
Yeah,
what happened from there?
I went to the welfare office because now I got this baby. I got this kid. I need some daycare. I need the things because I gotta get it together. And in this story, I have to laugh in retrospect because I tell this story now when it talks about politics and policy and things like that. So going into the welfare office as a 17-year-old mom,
Right.
I sat next to a couple, and they were a black couple working on their master's degrees. They just had a baby, and they're like, we need a little extra help. Being a student doesn't pay. Now we have this baby. It was unexpected. I'm like, okay, that's great. Like, it didn't feel horrible to be in a welfare office sitting next to them.
Right.
I remember the woman walking out crying, and I didn't know why, because I went back there and they gave me everything I wanted, food stamps and health care and daycare and everything. I'm like, this is nice.
Right.
So fast forward 5 years later, I'm married. I met this amazing man on the side of the highway. I got lost coming from North County trying to get to South City, and I don't know how I ended up in Illinois. And so this I pulled over because I don't think I had GPS at the time, and this black cowboy hops out to help me get back to where I was going. I was like, am I being punked? Like, this is a black dude with a cowboy hat on, cowboy boots, a 4-wheel on the back of his truck, a dog hanging out the window. I was like, this is insane. So he tells me how to get back. We exchanged numbers, and, eventually, he really helped in my healing. Like, he loved me in a way that I didn't love myself. He really helped me a lot. So 5 years later, we're married. We just had a baby. He lost everything because he got leukemia.
Oh no!
Got leukemia.
Wow.
Got leukemia. What? I'm 21
You're
at this
22,
point.
yeah, 21, 22. Holy
so
cow!
Here we go. But he made it through leukemia. His oncologist said, "You're my only patient that didn't either die or have a bone marrow transplant. I don't know what you're doing, but keep it up." It was faith.
Right.
He used to say, "I don't have what they say I have. I know the tests say that I have that. I don't have that." He used to walk around the hospital and pray for people. He's like,
That's
look at all
awesome.
these sick people.
Right.
Like, not me, them. Like, so he would go through, and he's like, I don't have that. I'm not claiming it. We didn't do research about it. It's just like, no, this is gonna go away.
That's awesome.
So in the middle of that, he ended up getting on disability. We got this new baby, so we're like, okay, we'll go and get some assistance. That's what it's there for. We can go back to school, get some degrees. We were in class together at St. Louis Community College. It was great. We get there, and the lady is going through the numbers, and she's like, "Oh, you pay $800 for rent?" And it's like, yeah, that's in South City. Like, we still hear gunshots. We live on a state street. We just don't want to live on the north side. Like, She's like, and neither one of you work, and you're both going to school. And she said, "Who do you think you are?"
Oh wow!
And I was like, "What?" I'm sitting there with my head high. I got a
Right,
husband.
yeah.
Look at me, just doing my thing. We got our kids in grade schools. Both my daughters speak Mandarin. They're fluent in Chinese. So we put them in a charter school so they can learn a second language. I'm like, these people are gonna love me. They're gonna give me everything I wanted. I think they gave us like $16 of food stamps. Like, they didn't want to give us daycare, anything, nothing. So I'm like, wait a minute, this is not set up for me to win. Because when I was single, they gave me everything.
Right.
You guys are incentivizing bad behavior,
Yeah,
irresponsibility.
Mm-hmm.
But I was a crazy liberal Democrat. And I was like, this has to be the other side. This has to be the other side.
Right.
Because they're racist. I was drinking the Kool-Aid. I am a recovering liberal, if you don't know. But, I was deep in it. That's just what you do. We never talked about policy. We never talked about politics or anything. When you vote Democrat, regardless of if it's helping or hurting.
Yeah,
you just do it. So
we're originally from Kentucky, and my grandmother, granddad, everybody was a Democrat. They didn't care who was. Everybody was still thinking they were voting for Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
That.
yeah. So, there was always things that I thought were wrong.
Right.
My sister has been on Section 8 her entire life. Hardly worked jobs. Never really had to take care of my niece and nephew. She just kind of, did whatever she wanted to because the government was paying for it. So I knew that the system was flawed. So fast forward, my ex-husband and I ended up getting divorced, and I'm back to dating. It was very ghetto. I do not recommend it. Okay. I don't recommend it. But I will say, it was necessary. The woman that I am today was because I left that marriage. My ex-husband was great. He really was. He was a sweetheart. He did lose, I think, pieces of himself with the cancer. He lost his motivation to work. He lost his motivation to do anything. He kind of just wanted to stay. He was so afraid. He was living in fear. Like, I don't want to do anything that takes me away from the kids. And I got it. Like, I empathize with that because, I've never been the actual patient.
Right.
So, I tried to love on him the best way that I could, but the kids still needed. It was like the boat was sinking, and one of us had to jump off to go, save us. And so I had to leave to make sure that I was still, because lights were getting cut off, the bills weren't paid. I was riding the bi-state bus, dropping the kids off at daycare, going to school, going to work. I was like, wait, this doesn't make sense because this man had potential. He could be, he was running a trucking company at one point. I'm like, I see it, and you've lost it, and I want to help. I want to be there.
Right.
So going out into the dating world, it was ghetto. So I was attracting all these like worthless men. Like the first guy I dated ended up being like a meth addict.
Right.
And I didn't know it. It was black. I didn't even know black people smoke meth. Let me just say that. But I was like, wow. But it was.
You just say rednecks with no teeth smoke meth.
That's what you think. But clearly not. Like that is a universal drug, I guess. But but I kept getting all these low quality men. I'm like, Jess, like you are the common denominator. It's you. It's you. It's you don't value yourself. You don't think you're good enough to attract any other person. Who do you have to be? Who do you have to become? What do you have to do to feel comfortable enough to sit across from somebody else that is doing something bigger, that may be doing life bigger than you? And so I started doing a lot of investing in myself. I mean, I started yoga and podcast, listening to podcasts, reading a bunch of books. I went back to school, working on my accounting degree. It was just like, yeah, I'm that girl. Like now I can do it. I can hold my own. So I met my current partner, and when we started talking about blending our families, I would come over. I mean, this is my conversion story from one side of the political spectrum to the next, and really kind of leading into how I got passionate about or in understanding what's happening in the schools. So he would talk about Donald Trump, and I would roll my eyes because, again, like this man, the media told me he was racist. He's a racist. Like, don't talk to me about him. Just don't do it. So he would let it go, and he would put on like The Apprentice. And Trump will be there being witty. And, I'm like, oh, that was funny, but I'm not going to laugh because I don't want to be a racist. He would just put videos, and eventually I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I'm starting to like this dude. I'm starting to like, the wittiness. I'm starting to like the business deals. This is very interesting, but I was having this cognitive dissonance. I can't hold these two ideas. These are opposing ideas. You either are funny, witty, smart, and brilliant in the things that you do, or you're racist. So I'm like, all right, Jess, you gotta choose. So I'm like, all right, let me play with the idea that he's not. And so I started doing a bunch of research on, both sides of the spectrum, what both sides are saying. And I'm like, hold on. They just did a major smear campaign on this man. They took all these things out of context. Like when I started looking at the economy, I was like, I got the best job of my life during the Trump presidency. I didn't have a degree. I'm sitting up in Bank of America as an operations analyst in the Global Wealth and Investment Management Department. I don't know how that happened. So I'm like, okay, they're lying to me. Like they're not telling me the truth. Then I read Candace Owens' book, Blackout. She gave me the language I needed. She's like, oh no, honey, all those policies you think that are hurting your community, that's from your people. They're doing that. And so that gave me the language. That opened my eyes, and I'm like, man, more people need to hear this. More people need to be active in politics. More people need to understand who's doing what and how the narrative is being played and how they're manipulating big communities of people just to get a vote, and how that's harming us, and how, playing a victim is not getting us anywhere. And so I'm just like, I got to tell everybody. Little did I know, everybody didn't want to hear that. Everybody didn't want to. I thought people were going to be like, oh, man, this is great.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
No. So as I started getting more into, the whole political spectrum, kids were starting at Rockwood, and my neighbor sent me an email that was leaked in the Rockwood School District talking about, you guys need to hide. The parents are not, they're not happy with what we're teaching. Don't stop teaching it. Just don't show them.
Hide it.
It's like, whoa, if that was my child, and every time I walk past, she hit her phone, I'm taking that phone and I want to see what's in it, because you're hiding something for a reason. So that got me to digging in the district, and lo and behold, they're like, oh yeah, critical race theory. I was like, what's that? That's interesting. Starting to understand what it was, I'm like, wait a minute. I got a blended family, blended by blood and blended by race. What does dinner time look like? Do we sit, to my white daughters, you need to apologize to your black sisters, because you might not have known it, but you are an oppressor.
Exactly.
You're oppressing them.
So we have the same issue. I've got black kids, and we're trying to raise them in a way that lets them understand that there is a history where we screwed up royally. And there is still today some racism within our culture, but you're going to have to grow up past that to an extent where you are man and woman. They're twins, boy-girl twins, and where you're a man and a woman that is a man and a woman based on your character, not your color.
Yes.
And that critical race theory scared me to death, because I've got a 19 and a 21-year-old that are white kids, and all four of my kids have been adopted. And so that, to me, I actually came to your presentation of the critical race theory that they had at the farm. I can't think of the name of the farm. What that was? Brookdale. Exactly, Brookdale. Yeah, Brookdale. And that started opening our eyes to what was really going on in the school system. And I think, COVID helped us substantially because it opened up the school system via Zoom to the rest of the world. Like not just the Rockwood school system, but the school system around the United States. And parents were actually able to see what was going on in the schoolrooms. They were able to hear the teachers. They were able to see because most of the parents were doing the Zoom stuff because kids didn't know how to do that.
No.
Most adults didn't know how to do that.
Right, we're
So
all struggling.
it was a weird dichotomy in the world at that time when they shut everything down, and the next thing you know, you're schooling within your home, and you're hearing the indoctrination that's going on.
Yes.
And I remember that email that went out as well about hiding stuff. Like, who is a parent or who is a teacher to tell me as a parent, and my kids especially, to hide something from me?
That's it.
Like they don't have the authority to do that.
No, we're not gonna stand for it.
No.
So that especially Brent being new to the party, like you couldn't talk to me about politics at all. Too. And then you put that on top. I'm like, y'all never gonna stop me now. Like I'm fired up. So again, started going around the state with Missouri Prosper, talking about critical race theory and how it shows up, because they're hiding it. They're hiding it as diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they do it masterfully because nobody wants to fight against diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's like, oh, you're against diversity? What kind of monster are you?
Right.
You don't want to include people? You're a monster.
Right.
So they do it in a way to where it's hard to fight it, but when you dig deep enough, you see it's like, no, we got to fight this. You're not. Why do you have your teachers doing professional development on whiteness?
Right.
And
And
oppression.
that's not
matrix?
equality. That's actually
not. It's racism.
lowering somebody else to elevate somebody. That's
Yes.
not what the definition of equality is.
No, but they don't
Right.
care about equality.
Right.
They want equity. They want everybody to end up at the same place, which you don't see that in any species on the planet.
Right.
That's unrealistic. You'll never see that. So it's just like, what are we doing? And we don't deal with the other issues. It's like the schools want to be the social workers. They want to be the parents. They want to be everything. You can't do that. Your job is to teach them, give them a solid foundation. Academics is the gateway to freedom. You want to help the minority children? Make sure they can read.
Right.
Make sure they can do math. Make sure they can think critically. Not this crap that they're doing now. And the problem is, you're giving them a way out. Kids want an excuse anyway. That's just natural. It's like, oh yeah, I didn't do my homework because my dog ate it.
So we have the same issue in the church with parents who will bring their children to Sunday school or youth group and expect the church, and you got to realize the church only has children, if they came every Sunday or every week, that would be 52 hours. And they expect their children to learn to learn about Jesus, to learn about the Bible, to learn about how to be, live a great godly life, and yet they don't teach them at home.
Right.
And that's impossible and we're losing kids at the age of 18 of 82% are leaving the church.
Wow.
So we're only keeping 12% of those children. And most of those 12% saw the life being lived at home, mom and dad, most cases. Not saying mom and dads, I do believe mom and dads are the way to do it, and I know that it can be done other ways, but when you put the godly context in a parenting world, and the parents actually do what they are learning at church at home, it sticks.
Yes.
And what has happened in the school system is we've let our kids get on the bus, go to school, and we've forgotten about them for 8 hours. And then when you think about the school system has them as long, if not more, than a parent does.
Absolutely.
And so what's happening is the school is then indoctrinating them to whatever they want in most cases, especially depending on the grade. And then the parent is not doing anything but other than making sure they get their homework done.
That's it. And
they're not involved.
That.
Right.
Yes. And it has to be a collaboration. It has to be a partnership. We don't want to talk about that because especially when you talk about the minority population. When you start digging into single parenthood, not having fathers in the home, when you start talking about the welfare state, when you start talking about culture,
right,
then all of a sudden you racist.
Right,
but
exactly.
I am the product of my environment. My sister is a product of her environment. We are products of our environment. You can't fix that in school.
Right.
And so that's what they claim they're trying to do. We're trying to help them and give them resources and make sure the achievement gap. Education has to be valued in the home first.
Right.
If they don't think that education is important, it doesn't matter who's standing in front of them. It doesn't matter if they're a black person, a white person, age. It doesn't matter. They don't have that strong value of education. They don't care. We go here to hang out. We go here to eat. We go here to clown. Whatever school is for different reasons.
Right.
But what you need to do is when they do get ready to learn, the ones who come for education, you need to be ready to educate them. And that's not happening. And they claim, oh, no, we don't bring personal values and this is not political, but everything that comes out their classroom is liberal.
Yeah.
It's all liberal. And when the children, I've talked to plenty of students that say, when they give us writing assignments, I write what they want me to write, not what I actually believe, because I want that A.
So, exactly. So you've got to curtail your social media writing is basically what you're doing. So you don't get blasted and or the woke community doesn't end up, what do they call it when they banning somebody on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. You can get banned at school.
Oh yeah.
For you may not get kicked out, but they're going to ban you to an extent.
Listen, my daughter is dealing with that. The administrators and the teachers don't like where I stand, and they're making that very clear. So we had a teacher, which I'm still waiting to figure out who he is. See my daughter in the hallway, which they had to do some research because my daughter doesn't even have my last name. So you guys have been all over social media looking at her picture. You know who she is. They pulled her. He said, "Come with me." And she's like, okay, because, again, she respects authority.
Right.
He takes her to the principal's office. He says, I just saw this young lady smoking in the hallway. She's laughing, which they thought, she wasn't taking it serious, but she thought it was a joke because you didn't just see me smoking in the hallway.
Right.
So she's laughing, and they're getting upset because she's not taking it serious. Right. And eventually she's like, wait, y'all for real? And so she's like, all right. She's upset. She's crying. But she's finally, she comes to herself, and she's like, run the cameras back. Run the cameras back, and then we'll see if I was smoking in the hallway. They sent her to class.
Wow.
I didn't get a phone call
Good
about that.
for her.
I didn't get a phone call from the school about that. I got a phone call from my daughter.
Holy cow.
She went to class crying. Her teacher, of course, wants to know what's wrong. The teacher goes to the principal. The principal goes back to my daughter and says, did you tell Miss So-and-so that we had an altercation, like I did something wrong? This how she talking to a 14-year-old freshman.
Girl. Wow.
And still didn't call me. So I had to call and say, hey, what's up?
No kidding.
Did y'all run back them tapes? Oh, it was inconclusive. So why didn't I get a phone call? Because I thought we had handled it. No, you don't handle anything with the 14-year-old.
Yeah, exactly.
She won't tell me who the teacher was because you knew. You knew the moment that he brought her there, that was a target. You got teachers that would say, oh, I know who your mom is. I know what she's about.
See, I grew up in the day of spanking at school. Literally where they had the paddle where every year the shop teacher would make 5 or 10 paddles I'm not kidding, out of half-inch wood with bored holes in it, so it had aerodynamics.
Okay.
And they would literally call your parent if they would call and say, hey, is it okay if I spank Joe? My mom would be like, yeah, beat him.
Yeah.
Go ahead. But that I also didn't grow up in an age of indoctrination.
Right.
I grew up with reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Right.
That's what we were taught.
Yes.
I don't ever remember. Man, I talk to my kids all the time. Like, I didn't even care about politics until I was well in my 40s.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't care who was Democrat, Republican. Like, I didn't think of that kind of stuff because that's not the way that I was raised, and it definitely didn't happen at school.
Right.
And even when I was in college, it wasn't like that. Like, I don't understand why all of a sudden, I do understand. I'm not stupid. I mean, I know why the indoctrination started happening, but it was like, kids in my grade, where I grew up, they carried shotguns in the back window to school.
Yeah.
Nobody ever thought about shooting anybody at school.
Right.
We'd get in a fight and we'd be best friends the next day. Like, nobody ever thought about killing each other. And so my point in saying all this is that I think that, over the years, especially within recent years, I mean, if you think about it, we've only had the internet, less than 20 years? Was it 15 years? Is that what? 20 years? So you have, not only the internet, but social media driving an agenda.
Yes.
And it's driving our school systems. I want to play you something that I heard this week, And I just want you to listen to this, and then we'll talk a little bit, because it goes along with the letter and the things that they're writing in school. Listen to this.
642 Things to Write About is a paperback journal that's been used to supplement a senior writing course in Hudson for the last 5 years. But this week, a number of the prompts got parents' attention.
Write a sex scene you wouldn't show your mom. Rewrite the sex scene from above into one that you'd let your mom read. Drink a beer. Write about the taste. Write an X-rated Disney scenario. I hope each and every one of you is as uncomfortable as I am after reading that.
I was appalled when my wife showed me and read to me a few nights ago what our kids were being exposed to.
I'm sorry, what?
So in Ohio, and this is a school board meeting last week in Ohio, that one of the writing assignments, they had this journal that they were given, the junior and senior class. They were asked to write a sexualized Disney story, a time that they had a sexual encounter, about drinking, what it felt like, tastes like, and then it goes on to say, and I didn't put that in here, but it goes on to ask, have you ever thought about dying? And if you have, what does it look like? And so this is to 16, 17, 18-year-old kids that are, and this is a debate going on in front of the school board.
That's disgusting.
It is.
Shook, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
any teacher that would ask that needs to go to prison.
Yeah.
Any teacher that is encouraging that needs to go to prison.
Yeah.
That is child pornography.
Exactly.
That is pedophilia. No matter how you package it,
Right.
it is government funded pedophilia.
Mm-hmm. So here's the rebuttal from the mayor of the town. So he comes in a little bit later, and here's what he says.
Come to my attention that your educators are distributing essentially what is child pornography. So I'm going to give you a simple choice. You either choose to resign from this Board of Education, or you will be charged. Thank you.
That gave me chills.
So
That gave me chills. Yes.
Stood up.
Yeah. So
Yes.
you finally had somebody stand up, and what we're seeing, and this is just one instance. It went all the way back to when they were telling people they were going to call the FBI for parents who came in and protested and said something,
Yeah.
and they gave a number, and it goes back to the letter that actually came out in the Rockwood School District. That it's appalling to think that they would hide something from the parents.
Yeah.
That they would be teaching something or having them write something or having them do something that they would have to hide from their parents.
Exactly. Why?
Yeah.
You have to explain that. You have to be held accountable. That's why I love to see all the parents standing up now and pushing back. You have to answer these questions. Why are we doing this?
Right.
What is the relevance? How does this equate to academic excellence? How does this even equate to equity that you're talking about? It
Right.
doesn't. It's demoralization. You're breaking down a family. Don't tell your parents that your parents don't know what they're talking about. They're not. No. No. That makes me want to fight. I would go listen. Listen.
And if I can just jump in, it's interesting because we talked about when we started the podcast, and we said we're not going to do anything political, and this feels like it's political because we have a political candidate and we're talking about school politics, but this shouldn't be political.
This is
Democrat,
not-
Republican.
No.
This shouldn't be an issue of, hey, I'm going to ask your 17-year-old daughter, because
Right.
there's men and women at this school,
Right.
to write a sex scene for me that she wouldn't show you, and then I'm going to ask your 18-year-old son to go try a beer for the. That's not political.
No.
Right, exactly.
That shouldn't be
It
political.
shouldn't be.
That's why I had Jess on here, because these guys know me. I don't get into politics.
Yeah.
Jesus rules everything in my
Yes.
life, and he's coming back, and I don't have to worry about Democrat or Republican. But
Very true.
what does bother me is the immorality that is being placed within the school system
Yes.
that goes against every fiber of my being. And even if I weren't a Christian, even if I didn't believe in Jesus Christ, and I used to be an atheist, and as an atheist, I still didn't think it was all right for this kind of stuff to be done in a school system.
True.
Like, I don't see how anybody over the age of 18 years old could even think that this was okay.
Right. But when you think about the flesh, When you think about being human, there are certain things that feel good.
Right.
And when you're saying, oh, this is normal, when you're telling them to lean into it versus being disciplined, it's hard to be disciplined.
Right.
You're giving them the easy way out.
Right.
That's what it's about. It's about weakening people. We have no strength. We have no discipline. We have no morals. We have no direction. It's a free for all, and that
good.
feels good temporarily.
Right.
But we know what that's gonna do.
Yeah, we always say sin is fun for a season.
That's right.
You
That's
know,
right.
And
But
then eventually it takes over and usually takes you further than you wanted to go, keeps you longer than you wanted to stay, and costs you more than you wanted to pay. So
very true. Very true. So they know that. They are preying on young children who are in the stage of learning how to be disciplined, learning how to find themselves, learning how to have a moral compass. They're vulnerable. They're going through puberty. They already have all these hormones rolling. They're confused about who they are. They don't know their identity. And then when you put into the mix children that may be dealing with issues at home, they don't feel heard, they don't feel felt, and then you say, oh, that's okay, come over here, you can be a part of the LGBTQ community, we accept you. Oh, you don't know who you are? There are 90 different genders that I can tell. You can choose whichever one feels appropriate. They're manipulating, they're taking advantage of our children at their most vulnerable state.
Yeah, we do a lot of within the home, especially within the church, and especially through Man Up God's Way, is we want to train our men to our boys to be men, and we want to train our women to be women. We want to train our girls to be women, and in a godly stance, that's the way that God made us. He made man and woman.
Yes.
He didn't make 42 other flavors.
Right.
He made man and woman to be one flesh, and for that family unit to be the centrality of the community.
Yes, it takes two to create. It takes two to sustain.
It does,
and that's a man and a woman.
It does.
I talk about this a lot. Like, men need to be men so that women can be women.
Right.
We're playing both roles, and that's unfortunate. I can't be. So we have different characteristics. Women are typically nurturing. The femininity is about being. So we're just here, and we're kind, and we listen, and we understand, and we feel your emotions. That's very right now.
Right.
Men are about doing. The hunting, the providing, the protecting. That's very it's very active.
Yep.
There needs to be a balance. We can't nurture. We can't listen when the kids are feeling bad and they're depressed and they're all of the things that the world is throwing at them. We can't help them if we're trying to provide and we're trying to hustle and we're trying to grind and all of that. No, there has to be balance, and we have to get back to that. This not being able to identify what a woman is. It's like, how confusing is that?
Yeah, exactly.
What?
And we got a Supreme Court justice saying
great,
that.
Great. This is like as the world turns.
A
it's
potential
like
Supreme
TV.
Court justice, I should say.
Yeah. And even to say I'm going to put her in because she's black, like that. I want whoever's qualified. Somebody was talking about an airline the other day that said we want 50% of our new pilots to be black. I don't care about your new diversity hire Tyrone. I want to make sure that my plane will land safely.
Right.
I don't want to go into the operating room and say, oh, this is our diversity hire. He's going to do your open heart surgery.
Right.
Well, I want qualified people. I don't care what that looks like. Our fascination with race is just disgusting. It's like, no, we need good people. You need to be a good person.
And we've taken it even further than race, and we've our fascination with sex.
Yes.
Disney just announced that they're going to hire 50% of the LGBT. Like that's their goal, is to have their characters.
Yeah, and we're going to make sure we have a kissing scene with them.
Exactly.
Like this
in their movies and in their in the Disney World, parks and stuff like that. Like,
and Disney movies we were talking about this last night. Disney movies are a form of education. We learned about gender roles in Disney movies. We learned about what it is to be a lady, a girly girl, and a masculine
princess,
man.
Exactly. A prince, exactly.
And now they're just going to throw all that. That is a form of education. When you sit your kids in front of that movie, they're watching the roles, and they're saying, okay, how does this relate to me? How does this relate to my mom? How does this relate to my family? And now they're just confused. They don't know what to do. It's a free for all. It's
It does take people standing up, and I'm just really encouraged by that mayor out. What you said, Ohio?
Yeah, it's in Ohio.
Do we have his name? Do we know who that was?
I do have it. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy deserves a shout out for sure.
Yeah.
Because that's a bold move. And Jess, I know you said you're only 2 years into politics. I didn't get into politics till I was probably in my early 30s, but I read a lot, and you're sharp, girl.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, once
Sharp.
like the Bible says, the truth will set you free.
Yes,
When you
amen.
start going
Welcome
into that.
aboard the
Sorry.
Oh,
Welcome aboard.
They
today.
got you on autoplay.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, when you start hearing this, like, wait, this is it. And
Right.
that other stuff, that doesn't make sense to me. And so, yeah, I've been obsessed with it because I want people to
And all
wake
new
up.
at 5. A book intended.
Sorry, I was
Oh,
trying
no,
to
it's
find
okay.
the mayor's name, but I can't find it now.
We'll
Yeah.
try to get it. We'll get
Yeah,
it
we'll
on
get
our
it.
end,
We'll
and
put
we'll
it
put
in,
it
yeah.
out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so much, and I've been fascinated because I think once people understand it, and it's like, wait, this is not normal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this too. That I heard somebody say that somebody wanted to legalize aborting children like up to 4 weeks after birth.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
When does it stop?
It doesn't.
When
Well,
that's the problem. If somebody doesn't stop it, it'll just go on and on and on. Oh, you want to murder your children? Oh, they're not listening. Oh, they want to get married. They want to, you know, 2-parent family. They're Christian. Oh, just get rid of them.
Right.
Like that's the world that we're going to if somebody doesn't stand up. And I know I'm hoping, so as I go through this campaign, as it comes to an end, I'm hoping that people watch me and they see the resilience and they see me standing up, because it's been rough. They've called
Right.
me every name you can think of, even a white supremacist, and I'm black. So I'm hoping that they'll understand and have courage to say, we can do this, and we do have support, and you are guided and you are covered, and this is bigger. This is bigger than just us. And
Right.
if you stand up for what's right, you will be protected and you will be guided. I think people are afraid.
Right.
They're afraid to lose their jobs. They're afraid, you know, they will call your job, call your husband's job, call your sister-in-law's job, and say, oh, you know, did you know you hired a racist? Did you?
Right.
It's insane. But I'm hoping that this campaign will encourage people to come out. We got 3 seats in Rockwood next year that needs to be filled.
Right.
For years and years and years, people in America have no idea what they're voting for.
True.
They don't look at voter records. You can see how they're voting. The reason why kids don't get on the other way, we are not fighting against flesh and blood. We are fighting. There's 2 attacks the devil has: division and fear.
Yes.
That's what's happening.
Yes.
The voices that you hear the loudest is a very small group of people in America.
Yeah, totally.
But they have loud voices, and they have learned how to instill fear and how to create division.
The principle goes
right?
back to my daughter.
And so that's the issue. So the question is, how do you fight the spirit of fear and division? Because it's not flesh and blood. Half these people, they have what God calls a reprobate mind. Like, they think they're right.
That's true.
Like,
They do.
I don't get into politics at all, but our president, like, he makes Jimmy Carter look like Ronald Reagan, and half the nation voted for him.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you doing? Look at this. Look at how fast. I mean, not that the world wasn't already going to hell in a handbasket. That's the story.
Right.
There isn't another book in the New Testament that says this thing turns around. Now, that doesn't mean there can't be bright light in place.
Right.
That doesn't mean we don't run for school board members and try to do try to make changes in this, that, and the other. But we got to make sure we're fighting the right battle. Are parents at home praying for their children?
That's right.
Are we using intercessory prayer as a weapon? Because we're not fighting flesh and blood. So how do we change the battlefield the way that we're supposed to do it?
Amen.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's the question.
Yeah, that's true.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. And I think that's important, that we have to have those conversations, because again, people are afraid. They feel hopeless. They don't feel like they have any power or say in that. You go to these school boards, you go to places, they just look at you and kind of nod and don't say anything, and then it's just like, I don't know what to do. I don't have any power. But as you said, like, you do, and this is not just about people. It's bigger than that. So I think that's extremely important.
You know, my parents never got involved in school unless I was in trouble.
No.
You know, like
they didn't have a say.
Yeah, they didn't. Well, it wasn't even that they had a say. They didn't need to say anything.
That's right.
Like, they were doing what they were supposed to be doing. They were teaching us reading, writing, and arithmetic. You know, and it never became political.
Yeah.
Like I can remember. You know, and I'm not saying there's not some indoctrination there, but I had I still have great teachers that I know that, were looking out for my best interest, even though I was an idiot most of the time. That's not to say that, but my parents didn't have to get involved. Like now I feel like I'm an older guy, I'm 53 and I've got 11-year-olds, so I'm kind of, I call it 1.0 and 2.0. So this is 2.0 in my life. And I feel like I've got to be involved with every little thing they do. And plus they're African-American in a predominantly white community. And, we've had to have, some pretty serious talks with not only our kids, but with the teachers. And it just feels like more and more we're having to get involved with the system itself because it's just they're out of balance. They've gotten out of whack. And it's just like, just teach my kids how to read and to write and to add and subtract and multiply and let me do the rest of it.
That's it.
Right.
That was my whole campaign. It's like back to the basics. Just basics. If these children can do just that, they can do anything. They can do anything at that point.
Right.
I mean, they don't even have to go to college. They can learn a skill on Google. They can learn a skill on YouTube and still become multimillionaire. Just teach them.
Right.
That is it. Just give them the foundation that they need to create the life that they want to, based on their own family values and not the ones that you're giving them. You're giving, instead of just giving them the tools they need, you're giving them the path, and that's not your job. So,
and that all starts at home, right? So I didn't want to do this because I'm giving away some of my talk for the men's breakfast. Proverbs 22:6 or 7, somewhere around there, is the verse that says, "Train up your child in the way that he should go, and when he gets old, he will not depart." Right? Mm-hmm. That word "train," the verb in the Greek is gymnazig. It starts with G-Y-M. It means to exercise and drill. Mm-hmm. We are supposed to be training when you go into a gym, every single piece of equipment is for something. It has a specific reason why you're using it. And it does this, this, and this. And we are not doing that with our children. We're bringing our children to church on Sunday. And then the rest of the time, we're these basically secular parents, right? We're not doing right. A lot of homes, both people are working full time. I can say that because I came from a home like that, where my parents made great money and they both worked, but there were things that I needed in my life that I didn't get, and it stunted my growth for years.
Very true.
If you're doing that at home, then you're training them to go out and be light. We're called to be light in the dark, not light in the light.
True.
We're supposed to be training our children to go and be light in the darkness and not be affected to the degree that they are by some of this. Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be affected at all, or that or some of this stuff shouldn't be going on, but all of our issues in this nation go back to the family unit.
Yes.
They go back. I have managed thousands of young white, black, and Mexican men and women between the ages of 18 and 35. I can tell you, we're not doing what we need to be doing at home.
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
Getting somebody to come to work every day is a real issue. Right now, then you put them into a school and you're not selective about where you're putting them. And I don't mean that it's just they have to go to a school where you live, right? But that if we don't like the public school system, then school them at home. I tell Christian men all the time, be very careful what college you send your Christian kid to, because they are indoctrinating these children, and if they don't go to that school with the right foundation, they've not been trained to the degree that God's not just saying, take them to church on Sunday, pray over your meal, and give them some decent advice.
Right.
The
gotta live it out.
The rod that we're sparing is the rod of wisdom and correction.
Right.
Yes.
That's good.
I think one of the encouraging things that I do take away from this is something that Jess brought up is, I have an enormous amount of student debt from going to school. I have 2 degrees of which I'm not using, and I have a very good job making a very comfortable living. you don't have to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can go do a trade. I think there's 70%, 80% of trade is not filled right now.
Well,
in
you
the
do like I
US.
did. You get a free ride if you join the military.
There
That's
you
what I
go.
did.
Sign
It's a
up.
little scary
Yeah.
now, though. That's the stuff they're telling the military members.
I'm ready. Well, besides, the military's become woke too.
Yeah,
It's driving me
yeah,
batty. Oh my
yeah.
gosh. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. I think that's where, when we look at the overall picture, Ben's right. It is a spiritual battle.
Yes.
And if the enemy, Satan, if he can divide the homes, which he's doing a really good job with that, because he's doing everything from, relationships that are not meant to be together. And then he's dividing relationships that are together, godly relationships, because of infidelity and pornography and, this media-driven world that is sexualizing everything that we do. He's going after our kids the exact same way.
Yeah.
My, at the time, 7-year-old kid at school was told to go check out some website. And at 7 years old, he got his first view of porn. And I've got porn blockers. Like if I literally look at my phone, my laptop, anything that I have, I've got a porn blockers on there that would literally send an email to my elders and my wife. And he found an old iPad that it was probably the first generation iPad, turned it on and was on there. And that's how, the schools, and that's not the school system's fault. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying that's just the way that the culture that we live in now is so information, debauchery, sin is so available right now by a click of a button.
Yes.
Literally by a click of the button.
I've been off Facebook now for, I don't know, a couple of months. And I got off Instagram. I got off Twitter, which Instagram and Twitter I was barely using. Every once in a while I'd post pictures of the grandkids. I go to foxnews.com once a day. Never watch the news. I watched the news some when the Ukraine thing first started down. But then I caught myself watching it every night and my mood changed. I've gotten rid of all that stuff. Now, that's not realistic for everybody. But also, the church isn't doing their job.
Right.
Right? So we're not doing our job the way we need to. People don't know people in there. Just think if everybody in your neighborhood knew everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys know a lot of people in your neighborhood. Just think if neighborhoods got together and ate
Actually
together
just talked.
sometimes
Yeah,
and
and had a
did
good-
the things that the Acts Church was doing.
Right.
How a lot of this would change, because it's so easy to create division between people that don't know each other.
Yeah.
True.
Right?
And I think that's what you were witnessing while you were going through this campaign was, people were coming at you that don't even live in our neighborhood.
Yeah, had
or
no
live in
idea.
our community
Or
whatsoever.
Even in the city. I had
Right.
people in Kansas City, just today calling me out on stuff like, "Wow, you don't even have skin in the game here. You
Right.
you just hate me."
Right.
Because of what somebody told you, or because we don't agree on things. I got a phone call from a woman who was friends with one of the people that is actually my opponent. We believe very different things. And she's like, "Man, every time I see Jessica, she hugs me, she embraces me. Like, that's kind of strange." It's like, no, it's not. That should be normal. Every time you see me, I'm going to love on you. I think your ideas are wacky.
Right.
But you're human, and I love you, and I know you came to that conclusion based on the information that you had, and I'm going to love you regardless. I'm the bridge. I'm going to be the bridge.
That's
you guys
awesome.
expect one thing out of me. I'm going to always show up and show you differently. We don't have to hate each other. Our community, our district is so divided and broken.
Yeah.
Somebody has to say enough is enough.
Well, the issue is, I don't think it's just our district. I think the world right now is
yeah.
broken. I think, I've been preaching this for the last 2 years. COVID did a major mental, spiritual. It did spiritual and mental damage to the culture.
Yes.
Because for months, all we had to go by was whatever came through a phone or the TV or the iPad I spent hours myself with church folks texting and Zooming and, just going back and forth for a few weeks until we finally went back to church. I think we were only closed down for 4 weeks. And we went back to church pretty quickly. But still, we still had this disconnect because everybody was wearing a mask and we had 6 feet separation and all this craziness happened. And the vaccines, and then you get into, you know, again, you saw the race issues come, you know, in Seattle. You saw all that stuff happening. And so we have right now in our world a hopeless in ministry and church. They're hope-filled because they have Jesus. They're not worried about this stuff. Like, I'm not kidding. They're not worried majorly. Now, there's always one or two, you know, in the barrels, but we have hope.
Yes.
And Ben's right. We need
gospel like it's supposed to be shared. So
Right.
if you get into the back of into the book of Acts, they weren't standing up in front of people and going, God loves you.
Right, yeah.
He loves you so much. Do you know how precious you are to God? That's true. But until you become saved, God doesn't like you.
Like,
God,
we need to start spitting some
God
facts.
hateth Esau. I just broke out the KJV on you.
Okay.
He hates sin.
Yeah.
And before your conversion, God does not like you. He does not. I'm not saying you got to go up and tell people, you're going to hell. But there is a way to do it like Peter stood up and did it. And that is, hey, repent. Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ and be baptized. Right? And you will receive the Holy Spirit. That's the gospel.
Amen.
Yeah.
That's the gospel in its truest form.
Because one sounds like, oh, it doesn't matter what you do.
That's
you
right.
can do anything. Oh, he still loves you.
Right.
Oh, you just smoke crack in the bathroom. That's okay.
That's right.
And we just going
Yes.
you physically have to turn around and start doing something different.
sometimes-
it doesn't work.
Walk in a
Sometimes-
different direction. You're exactly right.
Sometimes when I do announcements in the church, I say I start with something that pierces people's heart, and then I'll look at everybody and say, did I say welcome to Ignite Church? Like this business being a Christian.
Yes.
And people need to understand that there is no do-over.
Right.
Right? You
Yeah.
get one shot.
Yeah.
And say, who stands between you and your grave? Right?
Yeah.
Like, who stands between you and your grave?
Yes.
Jesus stands between you and your grave. Now, whether you believe that or not, you will deal with it one day.
Yeah.
Because every knee will bow and 1 out of 1 dies.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
people need to
100%.
start hearing
Yeah,
people need
exactly.
to start hearing that message. I mean, and the administration board.
Yeah.
We believe that God's going to put you guys into this position. And we did it because we want Christian folk in there that care about the children and that want to do right by the children. And like you said before, they're getting involved with all these things, talking to me about what I should or should not believe in. Right? They taught me not to fight, to
Right.
respect my parents, and to respect my students around me. That's it.
Yeah.
That's what I was expected to do at school other than my work and the tests.
Yeah.
We even had home ec.
Oh, yeah.
Home ec taught men's roles and women's roles, and you could come alongside and help.
Yes.
Yeah,
Or learn
we
to cook.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, teach me how to cook. Yeah, I can do
Yeah.
mac and cheese all day long. But we were talking earlier before the podcast started. Authenticity
Yes.
is a major problem. We do have the mask behind, you know, the screen. I call them Facebook prophets and Google theologians. You know, they never get involved in somebody's life, but they're keyboard warriors all day long.
That's right.
You can't be authentic that way.
No.
And authentic. You've shared your story, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because that's who you are. You know, that's who. That's what made you who you are today. To be able to stand in a world that, you know, just really is mean. Number one. Number two, that they don't want opposition.
Right.
And they will do everything to blast you if you do give them that opposition, especially with the school board position that you can potentially take. Now, again, that's just part of the fight.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the fight to get in is going to be even greater. And I pray that both you and Izzy get in at the same time, because that'll be a huge help. But I think you being authentic about who you are, where you came from, what you've gone through, what you've seen, you know, the people, I would say, in bondage.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
To the system that they don't step up, because it costs you to get married.
Yes.
And it costs you to have another baby. It costs you. They wouldn't take care of you.
No.
Even in a time when you actually needed it. Now you had your wherewithal about you to be able to go out and make it on your own, but not everybody does. In the Appalachian of Kentucky, it could be in the the cities of Chicago's. Like it can be everywhere. It's not just necessarily a black thing.
No,
it's a black, it's a white, it's a Mexican.
It's a human thing.
It's a human thing.
It's a human thing. We talk about. I listen to Thomas Sowell, and he talks about disparities. It's like you said, in the Appalachian, in the mountains. It's just about location.
Yeah.
You just happen to be away from everybody
Everything
else.
Yes.
That nobody's discriminating against you. Nobody hates you. Nobody's forcing it upon you.
Right.
That's just, you just happen to be. You know, they have the opportunity to leave and do other things. We have plenty of opportunity, but to try to destroy, you know, what we have now because of some, you know, disparities. But yeah, the welfare system is about destroying the family unit.
Right.
You incentivize women to not marry
and to have kids
and to have
because you get more money.
You get more money. I used to facilitate a teen group in East St. Louis, and the horror stories I would hear, I never thought it was possible. A girl was like, yeah, my mom wants me, she's 16, my mom wants me to have a baby so that daughter, you're going to destroy her life so you can get a couple of more food stamps instead of giving her a way out to say, no, you're going to finish school, you're going to get educated, you're going to lay a solid foundation, and that's what's going to be. Even if you want her to stay home and help you, that's going to give her more freedom than just, but that's all they know. It's a cycle. I watched my sister deal with that. Now, my niece just had a baby. She's 17, just turned 18. And I was like, would you ever want to live, you know, in something like this? She's like, no, not really. I like where I live. But that's all she sees. She's normalized that. She's like, yeah, I'm going to the welfare. It's a cycle. And let's, you know, I want people to be empowered.
Right.
I want you to give them an empowering message. Like, you can do whatever. You have to believe. You have to have faith. You have to persevere. You have to fall down. You have to get back up. That's the name of the game. It's something good out of life. But that's not what they're doing. I had a teacher, my daughter, if you would ask her what she wanted to be, she would always say, I want to be a criminal defense attorney. Never hesitated, never studied, never stuttered. She told one teacher that. Now, my daughter does struggle with English reading. She speaks English fluently, but her first academic language was Mandarin. But when they see her, they don't see that. They see a black kid that's struggling to read like the rest of them. She was like, oh, I don't know about that. You should think about doing something else. It's a lot of reading that happens in law school, and that might not be a good idea. No. I didn't realize that she took that to heart until somebody asked her that. She told me about the teacher telling her that, and I encouraged her, and I'm like, no, you got this. Like, and somebody that broke my heart. Instead of you saying, no, okay, I see where you are right here in reading. What do you love to read? We're gonna find what you love to read, and then all of a sudden you're gonna be reading, and then you're gonna be back on grade level, and then you're gonna get to this, and before you know it, you're gonna be a criminal defense attorney. That's awesome. The message you give them.
Exactly.
That's not the message they gave her. It's that bigotry of low expectations. It's like, no, sorry. Maybe you should think about being something else.
Well, and that's why discipleship is so important. Men or women in the community that take the. I used to work at a huge warehouse, and I had 435 employees. And I stood up one time in a night shift meeting. I stayed late to meet with this group that I was having trouble coming to work. And I stood up, and it was a lot of young black and white men that just weren't doing well in life. And I challenged them. And every single day that you're supposed to be here for 90 days. And if something drastic doesn't happen that shows you the benefit of working every single day of your life, I'll give each one of you $20. Now, we're talking about probably a group of 55, maybe 60 people at the time. So the worst time later, I started to have some of them come up and start to talk to me about that talk that I did that day. And one of the guys stopped me in the hallway. He said, listen, I just want you to know I listened to you that day. And he said, now I was behind on my child support, and now I'm caught up. I just got a new car, and I just want to tell you thank you. Working through me.
Yes.
I don't take credit for any of it.
Yes.
Because I never cared about another soul in my life except for myself before God.
Yeah.
But my point is, that day I made a choice to invest, to go out on a limb and not worry about losing my job, because I challenged them. It wasn't, oh, God loves you talk in these young men's lives, some of them it probably didn't. I never heard from them. But that's why in a community we're supposed to be, it takes a village to raise a kid.
Yes.
But you don't know your neighbors.
Very true.
You know what I'm saying? Nobody can tell nobody in the world can tell your kid correct your kid in public.
Yeah.
You'd flip, not you.
Yeah.
But people would flip. How dare you speak to my... Well, listen to me. Your child's a problem.
Right.
Yes.
And you need to do something about it, or I will, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you have to, we if we go back to the church model, and the church model would actually get out there and do something, we've talked about it before. If the church was doing what it's supposed to be doing, there wouldn't need kids to be adopted.
Right.
That we wouldn't need the welfare system.
Yeah.
Because the church would be doing, instead of building huge buildings and spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on concerts and this, that, and the other, we'd be doing other stuff with that money. Not that you don't have a church, not you don't have some of that in the church, but the excess in the church right now is crazy.
The reason we have universities is because of the church. The reason that we did have an orphanage system, if you will, an orphan system, it was because of the church. And the problem was the church gave it over to the government, and now the government, and here's the issue with the school system. When you're getting your paycheck from somebody, they have say-so really on what you do and say.
Absolutely.
And so when 90% of your funding is 2 years, they threaten to take their funding away.
That's it.
If you don't use the mask, we're going to take your funding away. If you don't do this, we're going to take your funding away. If you don't, do this, and they change the curriculum or the stance of the curriculum every 4, 5, 6 years, whatever. I mean, what's the stupid math they tried to throw up?
Common Core.
Common Core. Like, how dumb is that?
Yeah, and I did some research on Common Core, and they were talking about how that was linked to a system. Be a janitor, so that's your destiny. So it was categorizing children based on their math. It's like,
scores.
again, that's not empowering. That gives you no room for evolution. Society.
And as long as we have electric, kids don't need to worry about math.
No.
I mean, I literally can do any kind of math problem I want to right here on my phone.
But they will have to learn how to use the system.
But yeah, they either that or like. I keep telling my kids, I'm like, the one thing that I would have spent more time on is English.
Yes.
Learning to write, learning to speak well, learning to, understand words, like that would have been so much better. In the Bible, it talks about generational sins and, kind of going back to the system, whether it be welfare or, the adoption system or whatever, and societal issues when we look at communities, whether it's North St. Louis or the Appalachian Mountains or, Chicago or Harlem or, wherever those normal communities that are struggling to get people out of the cycle, if you will. The Bible talks about generational sin, and that sin is passed on to generation after generation. And the point of the story is that there is a point where somebody can stand up and say, no more.
Yes.
I repent. I'm done. For me and my family, this is not going to happen anymore. And Ben was talking about praying for our kids. One of the things that we did early on is we've raised our kids with a bar, especially spiritually, that was really, really high. Like, they were pastors' kids. We wanted them, we homeschooled our first 2 kids. We're trying to reorganize with our second set of kids and trying to figure all that out again. But we've always had our bar extremely high for them, because when we do let them out of the house, when they do finally go, they're going to fall. The world's going to come after them. But that fall, if the bar's up here, their fall is only down here.
Yeah.
But if I don't give them some kind of bar, you know, if I raise them way down here and they fall, I mean, that depth, that distance there is a lot greater than this distance up here. It might be the same drop, but because I didn't raise them with that kind of mentality to have a higher bar, and I think that's what society is doing, is it's creating a bar that's so low that it doesn't feel like anything.
No, and you don't feel the failure. You don't feel the falling down. You don't feel, you don't feel losing. Like we give out awards for just showing up. We don't feel anything.
Right.
It's just like, oh, this is normal. And as long as if I show up, I'm good. Like versus like the hard work and the standards. So we do have to get back to that. And that's, as parents, we set that in our actions, not only by the words we speak, but how we show up every day in our lives. Like you talk about generations and breaking that. Like that was me. Right. And we got to remind people that's not going to be easy. That's not an easy road. I got family that won't speak to me.
Right.
They don't like what I'm doing. They don't like what I'm saying. It doesn't fit their narrative. And I'm okay with that because my kids are watching me.
Right.
They watch everything I do, and I want them to do what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. I want them to follow because they do what I say sometimes. They always do what I do. I watch them. I remember when my daughter started talking, and she used to smack her lips, and it's like, ooh, that's horrible. And my husband was like, you do that. I was like, I don't. And I quickly stopped because I'm like, she's doing everything.
She's doing everything you do.
Everything that I do.
In the Bible, it says, Paul tells the Corinthians to imitate me. He's telling them to, their example. They didn't get to see Jesus. Yeah. The closest thing they get to see to Jesus is Paul. And he says, imitate me. And I've told my children that, especially my boys. I tell them to imitate me. I'm going to be the closest thing to Jesus that you're going to see. I'm going to be fallible, though, where Jesus is infallible. He was perfect. He was sinless. But until you truly understand who Jesus is and understand what he is in you, I'm the closest thing that you have. And so I want you to imitate me. And Ben's right. We don't have enough people out there saying, imitate me. Let me show you the way. Let me challenge you to the way. Let me help you out of the way. And this is really convicting for me tonight. I don't know why, man. It's
so
it's
John
like,
5:19 says this. Then Jesus answered and said to them, most assuredly I say to you, the Son can do nothing of himself, but what he sees the Father do.
Yeah.
For whatever he does, the Son also does in like manner. Now, in the context, he's talking about him and the Father. Right. Spiritualize that a little. Take it to the man of the house, right? Yep. So a son that grows up with no father, they're running the streets. They're trying to figure out ways to get their manhood and to get that power that they're looking for that they don't know the right way. If your dad's lazy, you're going to grow up with lazy. I'm a person that my dad corrected me and he loved me. But there was never any wisdom behind the correction. Every piece of wisdom I've gotten in my life before God was by failure. That's how my wisdom grew all my life.
Yeah.
Now that's not an excuse. I was an adult. I've been an adult for a long time. I'm 50 years old. But my point is, like you said, we are a product of what we come from, unless something comes in and changes that. A great grandparents, whatever it was, something comes in and changes that. For me in my life, it was Jesus and then men that poured into my life, that saw these things in my life that weren't good and were pouring into me and teaching me these things. There's so many sons that are like their dads, and there's so many daughters that are like their moms. Yes. And we want to blame it on everything sometimes but ourselves.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And this is the importance of training up your child in the way that they should go. Right? We spend more time, and I'm not saying sports is bad, because sports is a really good way to keep your kids active in this, that, and the other. But we will put hours and hours and hours a day into sports, training our kids, paying people to teach them how to catch and throw in this, that, and the other,
Training
and
a
nothing on training them to grow up to be godly men and women.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yep, that's true.
So what do you think in your life? Like, what was the catalyst to? I mean, you could have easily been in the cycle. Like you there was a point in your time. I mean, you know, at 15, 16, you know, when you had your abortion, then 16 when you had your first child, and then or 17, and then.
I mean, even
you know,
those
20
years were rough. Yeah, like even to start, like, you know, 17, a new kid, like I was in the street bad. And I think some of it was the environment because of the age. You know, I got there early, so it wasn't a lot of trauma like
Right.
what you see with my siblings. There was trauma, but just not as much. My family, you know, we had chaos, but we also had family members that half of my family were highly educated. They were all married. They would come over for Christmas because my grandfather's birthday was on Christmas Day.
Right.
And so I would see them. They had these amazing relationships. They were doctors and architects and lawyers. So I knew there was something different.
Right.
I didn't see it in my immediate family, but I knew that there was something that
Right.
could be done. So I think that, you know, the impact of not having so much trauma, seeing that. And then my daughter, just watching her, I'm like, man, I have to do this for her. And, you know, again, my mother, my mother spent 17 years in prison. And when she got home, I was so excited. I thought, even though my mother wasn't there, I idolized her. So it's like a girl wants her mother. It doesn't matter if she's a
Right.
drug addict or what. She wants her mother. And so when she got home, I had just had my second daughter, and I'm like, this is going to be great. Grandma's going to be around. This is going to be so much. And she wasn't the woman that I built her to be in my mind. You know, she was still very selfish. She was, you know, she came back home and went straight to the streets. She wasn't grandma. She wasn't picking up the kids from school when I had to work. And there was a lot of bitterness and resentment. And so, you know, to talk about how I became who I am, it really, you know, a lot of that came through the journey of understanding her and forgiving her. It started off as bitterness, like, I don't want to be like you. I'm going to do everything I can to not be like you. I'm going to be the mom that I needed from my girls. And so it was really coming from a place of bitterness. But then I realized that bitterness was eating me up because I would avoid her phone calls. She would try to call, and I would talk about how you're the reason that I am the way that I am because you weren't around and I didn't have you. I was blaming her for everything. You know, if I couldn't go to work because my kids were sick, it's like, you should be here. Look at you. You're not, you know. So it was tearing me up. But then I realized it was kind of hurting her too, and I'm like, wait a minute, like.
Were you putting pressure on her at this time?
You know, I didn't really tell her about it. It was really internal.
Okay.
Because that just wasn't my style to just go. That's just what I was dealing with. Because I always felt bad for making people feel bad.
Right.
Because, you know, in a way, it's like I knew that, you know, you're a product of your environment. But I was still being a victim of that. And it felt good to blame her. And so eventually I'm like, wait a minute, Jess, this not helping you. Because this kid's still her. And she's still not showing up when they sick. And what's the point? That's without, you know, merit. So eventually I'm like, okay, Jess, you're so bitter. Every time she calls you, you get upset, you judge her, all of that. You killing yourself. Wait a minute. Did you ever take the time to figure out how she became the way that she is? Because that was the point where I'm trying to figure out how I became the person that I am and why I'm so toxic and why I can't, you know, keep my life together. So as I started being more kind to myself and loving on myself and, you know, being patient and having faith and all of that, I'm like, I got to extend that to other people too. So I'm like, all right, let me ask this woman about her story. And as she started telling me her story, I mean, my heart would break. I'm like, you don't even have what I'm looking for. You never got it. My grandmother had schizophrenia. So my mother took care of her. Her brothers and uncles were all sexually abusive to her. She took care of herself. So she turned to the street. She did the best that she could. I'm like, you don't even have what I need. You were never loved in the way that I want you to love me. It's like going to a water fountain and expecting Cheerios to pop out and being mad every time they don't. It's like, why are you doing that? And so I got to hear her story and say, man, you did the best that you could.
I think that's a problem with a lot of relationships is that we're preconceived expectations. Like we have this idea of what we want in the relationship, whether it be parental or, you know, your children or, you know, people at church or whatever. You have this preconceived ideas of what you think should be going on. And many times those people aren't even capable of giving you what you need.
That's true. And that goes back to authenticity too. Creating a space for people to just be whole. I want to know who you are inside and out. I mean, I may not choose you because you may not be a perfect fit, but I still respect me enough to let me choose. Because cool. I get it. We all are a product of our environment, but just come as you are.
That's good.
Please,
That's
there is
good,
always
yeah.
space for redemption. Come
Right.
as you are. I can work with an honest person that says these are my problems. Okay, let's figure out how we can fix that. But yeah, she, it was just like, okay, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
I love you right where you are. I'm not gonna keep holding you to this standard because you can't meet it. You don't have it.
Right. So
You
at what
never
point
got
did
it.
you forgive her?
This was a couple of years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
So I would start answering the phone. I would listen to her, and she would just go, relive her stories, and she would always say, "You are so much like me. You have the best parts of me." That drove me crazy.
Right.
I didn't understand that until recently after she died. So my mother, I got a phone call last year around this time from the hospital, and I had talked to her a few months before. I was avoiding her calls for a moment because she was really, I didn't realize she had been drinking heavily, but I just knew these phone calls are just, I can't
They're
do
odd,
it.
yeah.
But something was like, pick up the phone, Justice. Great conversation. It was so great, and I just embraced it, and I loved on her, and I said everything she needed to hear from me. Didn't know that was my last phone call with her. Got a call a couple of months later saying, your mom is here. You're the only person that she has listed as, her next of kin, even though I got siblings and she had other family. And her liver is failing. We don't know if she's going to make it. And so long story short, I went up there and signed the papers, and she passed from, her liver failing. And I went there because I wanted to see her and let her know that she didn't fail.
Good.
That she was
Amen.
loved.
That's
and
awesome.
that, forgiveness. I forgave
Right.
her. I loved her. I was right there with her to the end. It's like, you didn't fail, and I love you, and it all is well. I still feel her around me now. But that forgiveness was what allowed me to open my heart to other people, open my heart to everybody that's struggling, and understand, like, you're a product of your environment, and I can't expect certain things from you. Like, I just have to choose to love you where you are. That could mean I might not communicate with you, but I'm gonna still love you where you are.
Right.
That allowed me to do the same thing for my sister and forgive her for the things that she did to me. My daughter's father, it's like, I get it. So it's just like, I don't have a bad word about anybody.
That's great.
Yeah, it was.
I always say unforgiveness is like drinking acid and hoping the other person dies.
For real.
It's like,
it's like, y'all not thinking about me.
Right.
And I'm sitting over here killing myself.
and it's all, forgiveness is not necessarily for them, it's for you.
Yeah. And then the act, watching, when my siblings watched me go through that process, because they were still blaming her, and after she died, and the eulogy that I gave them was reminding her, every letter she wrote, every person she sent to our house, every gift she sent, every phone call, every visit, that was her loving us the best way that she could.
knew how,
And my brother got up and was like, I never thought about that. I've been sitting here angry, didn't want to say, and he's like, I can
That's
move,
awesome.
I can do this. And he mended the relationship with my father too, because my father was struggling for a long time. And I'm like, I don't care what y'all say. I love this man. He's been struggling, but he's been clean, and he's been, he's allowed to fall, and he's got, but he needs us. And so to watch somebody forgive
That's
somebody is
awesome.
powerful. So I'm just grateful that I can do that.
So
That's awesome.
when I think of your testimony, I think of John 1:5. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. You very well could have succumbed to darkness in your life.
Yes.
How did God play a part in that in your life? Where was God in your life through all this?
So I have a really interesting relationship with church. I mean, in and out of church. I remember going to church when I was younger with my grandmother, not my great-grandmother. And my relationship with my grandmother was always rocky because I watched her let her elderly parents raise us, and she didn't help. So she would go to church, bounce back and forth to church, and it was a social club for her, and these churches were kind of scary at times, people screaming, and it was just a lot. So I was never really into it until I started playing the piano. My piano teacher was a Lutheran, so we went to Lutheran church, and I played the piano. I would read the scripture, and I ran into some characters at church that really had me put church in a light that was negative. Like, if these are the people that are in church, I don't want nothing to do with church. I always had a relationship with God. There was always, I was always just that light, and it was always in me. But the things that happened within the church, like, there were some pastors that offered me sex. There was the people I were babysitting for that was also offering me sex. And there was so many things. And I'm like, I can't do this. I got to go straight to the source. So I was a part of a African Methodist Episcopal Church. Really liked it there. And I had a women's group called New Women in Christ.
Okay.
Because I was baptized when I was 14 in the Lutheran church. So there was always this in and out relationship, but there was always God. Even if it wasn't connected to church, there was always God, and it was always like, I know I'm protected, because getting through all those situations, you can't. How else do you explain that?
Exactly.
How else do you explain? And even today, as I walk, I'm like, I just get up and I just show up in rooms, and somehow I have favor. Somehow I give talks sometimes where I don't even feel like it was me. People be like, oh, I like that part you said. I said, honey, I don't even know what I said. So I've always felt that connection. But I think at this point, I have to find my way back to the family. I have to find my way back to the church that represents what God actually is.
Yeah. I just want to say one more thing, and I'm going to let you two close this show out. Be light.
Yes.
Amen.
Always.
I believe you're going to get this. I'm not saying this is from God, but it's dirty. And you know it, or you wouldn't be running. There's going to be a lot of darkness around you. I always use this analogy. Most people, when they become a cop, they become a cop for good reasons, and they want to change the world. And the darkness changes them.
Yes.
Right? Don't let that happen. Be light.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Pray.
Yes.
Make your prayer life better than you ever have, because you're going to be in the middle of it.
Yes.
And I'm praying that you remain the light.
Thank you.
And that even if you're affecting change and making things happen and fighting battles, that you're doing it as a representative of Christ.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, because that's where the strength comes from. I don't have it in me to do what I do. Like, this is above me. The doors that have been open over the last year, I couldn't have done that. I mean, I said a prayer about school board, because at first I'm like, I can't do this. I had the radio show and all of that, and I'm like, I can't do it. I'm like, all right, which one you want me to do? I'm just going, because in my mind, I'm like, I need to do the radio show. I got too much chaos happening in life for me to do this school board thing. And I'm like, but I'm going to surrender, and I'm going to see. I was walking into a meeting with the campaign team, fully ready to tell them I'm out. And as I walked in, I got a text from the radio station saying, Jess, we can only put you on Saturdays. Like, just like that. I didn't even have to ask. So I walk around with this confidence, because it's like, this is not me.
Right.
I'm just showing up. Like,
That's
whatever. So it's like, there's no losing. Like, the path is already laid. I just got to have faith and walk it. So I just keep showing up.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
And keep sharing the Saul side of your testimony. We always talk about Saul had a Saul side, and then he met Christ and he became Paul. So your testimony is, this is who I was, this is what happened, and this is who I am now in Christ.
Yes.
The power is in the bad side.
Absolutely. I said that uniquely qualified me.
And the reason it is because once Jesus comes in your life, you don't get credit for the rest of it.
Very true.
Okay,
Very true.
if you want to say you made a decision to accept Christ in your heart, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But after that, it's God through the power of the Holy Spirit, right? And all the power we have is in Christ. So the reason why the power is on the Saul side is because that's the side you own.
Yes.
Right?
Very true. Very true.
I told you I was going to let you guys close
I
the
love
show.
it. No,
Jump in
that's
there.
very important, because
Yes.
I think I talk about that all the time. People are like, wow, how did you live through all of that? And no, like, that is what built me.
Right.
That's what made me uniquely qualified to touch certain hearts in certain situations. I couldn't empathize with people the way that I do. And life doesn't stop. Like, I'm still living it. My ex-husband just got diagnosed with congestive heart failure at 35. It's like constant. My mom died. It's like, life doesn't stop. You're going to always hear about that, because that's where people are. That's where people are hurting. You have to own
good.
that. Yeah.
That's good. That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That goes back to authenticity.
Yeah.
In the church,
Yeah.
you've got a bunch of unapproachable people, and the reason why they're unapproachable is because they don't ever share their testimony.
Yes.
You feel like that you can't attain what they are. They come into a room and
Say
all they're
that.
ready to do is teach a lesson.
Say that.
Right?
Say that. That's true. And that's what because I listen to people and like, oh, my Ivy League degree and my 2 parents. I was like, I have none of that, so I don't even feel like I can get what you got. I want to talk to the people who've been drugged down the street by their hair like me. Like, I want, bring me all of that. Like, that's why people, when I see people, they just walk up and hug me, and people are like, you know what? I don't, but they know they can come to me.
Right.
Yeah.
The beauty of that story to Jess, and just to give, our listeners a little bit of encouragement, and your daughter a little bit of encouragement, that almost breaks me. I'm somebody who didn't read, if you guys heard my story, I didn't read till I was 23. But I have 2 degrees, and information's free now.
Yes.
I heard Pastor and you talking about how the bar is so low. We've put this bar super, super low. The caveat to that is it's so easy to shine.
Yeah.
If I can give, I don't know what you're reading currently, but you sound like you're well read. I heard you say that your family doesn't like what you're saying a lot of times. The ironic thing is you're actually just regurgitating information that was already said. One of my favorite autobiographies is Booker T. Washington, Up From Slavery.
Oh, I love that one. I got that on Audible.
I can tell you read it because some of the ideas that you're saying, they're his ideas. Frederick Douglass's autobiography is another one that really will shape, like it shaped the way I have thought about race and politics and all the above. I just want to encourage people who are listening. You know, the average American is reading one book a year.
Right.
Read 3 or 4 and you're ahead of the game. And it's not difficult. Shut the TV off. Read a couple books. Listen to audiobooks.
No,
but
people don't play with their Netflix.
But it'll
You're right.
it'll change your life.
Yes.
I can just speak to that. I mean, God can do amazing things. You start reading, He'll really start.
That's great.
You're like Will Hunting, man. You're like good Will Hunting.
Without the math, bro.
Yeah.
So I love your story. I do. I mean, I'm blessed by it, and you're courageous. You've got bigger guts. That's not normally what I say, but since I have a lady in the house, you have bigger guts. You have bigger guts than most people for stepping up into a position right now. I've said this a million times. You couldn't pay me $1 million a week to be in politics.
Yeah.
Like, just I would get angry. I would get mad. You know, it wouldn't be the good godly side of me. But I am impressed by you. I thank you for doing what you're doing, stepping up for it's our children.
Yes.
It's not a prestigious position that you're taking, but it can be a powerful one in the way that it changes our children, and I appreciate that, and I thank you for that. So tell the listeners right now the platform that you're kind of, tomorrow we'll know that you ran on and that, got you into that board seat, and that you're going to help us get past that craziness of this sexualizing our children and indoctrinating our children and, putting stuff in the library that shouldn't be there. Like what is it that you tell people that you're running on?
Ooh, so I put on there, I mean, I'm very proud that my values and visions are conservative. The basis of it is getting back to academics, just basic math and reading and science and just the basics. Like we stop all the other things,
right?
And then if you're going to talk about it, if you're going to have an extra class or talking about race, at least give them a diverse perspective. Don't have a one-sided narrative. Teach them. Allow them to know how to think and come to their own conclusions, again, based on their family values. Stop sending out these surveys where you're asking all these questions and trying to get to know what's happening in the house. So really, it's like stick to academics.
And there's nothing wrong with saying we screwed up.
Yes.
Okay, but we don't have to go 250 years later and still fight over this.
Yes, and then stop cherry picking data to support what you wanted to say.
Right.
You want to talk about slavery or after slavery? Why don't you talk about the time between the slaves being free and the civil rights movement, where you have the Booker T. Washingtons building universities and, I'm going to teach my people to, assimilate into society, and we have to talk about cleanliness and godliness and education. And why don't we talk about how we thrived at that point? You choose what you want to support the narrative. So for me, it's like, you're doing it so wrong. Just don't do it.
Right.
Just don't do it. Just get back to academics and transparency. And again, building that bridge. I want to be the bridge. We cannot move forward divided. If the parents hate the teachers, your kids still have to be in the classroom with them.
Right.
We can't be fighting the district if we want to move forward. So we have to figure out how, as individuals, how do we show up? How do you talk to your teacher in a different manner than you have been? Don't send that irate email. Like, we have to be that example every day. So it's really all about just getting back to the basics, making sure that those scores are going up. They are ready to compete in a global economy. They're ready to build the foundation of their lives, and that we don't get into our personal beliefs in school. You love everybody.
Right.
You don't separate them into groups. The black kids and the gay kids and these kids. Like, no, they're kids. Love them as kids and teach them the academics, and let the family teach them the values.
That's good.
Yeah, that's it. I just want to be the bridge. I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight Rockwood. I don't want to fight the teachers. I want to be the bridge. We got to start talking to each other where we listen for understanding.
Right.
I want to understand how you became that person. I'm very good at that.
Right, yeah.
I want to
You did,
understand
you did.
how you got
That's
to that
good.
point, because I was them. I was that person. I used to go to work late, not do what I needed to do, and then call my boss racist. I was you. I know what you. So I want to understand how you got to that point. And then I'm gonna kind of give you how I changed and got my eyes open to the reality of things. So I want us to get back. If we can't do anything else, just be good people.
That's great.
That's simple.
That's good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So how can people follow you?
Yes, so you can find me on Instagram at She Is Jessica Laurent. That's LAURENT. I am also on Facebook under Jessica Laurent. You can see the campaign page at jessicaforrockwood.com, but that won't be up that much longer. But yeah, my social media is always open. I welcome. Just slide into that DM. Like I love talking to people. Yeah, and we're gonna, I'm not sure what the future holds, but it's gonna be amazing.
Amen.
I know that for sure. It's
So I was going to ask the future. So worst case scenario, things don't go your way tomorrow. What's the plan then?
Not sure. I listen for directions.
Okay.
I learned to
Good.
stop planning because that's of me.
Good for you.
And that's of my own mind, and I never have the idea. It's already laid out.
Okay.
So I can't tell you what it is, but I really
just
hope
wait.
that people come around to witness whatever's happening.
Sovereignty of God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Jessica,
Yeah.
can you spell? I mean, not everyone's gonna have the Facebook pulled up. Can you spell your last name for everybody?
Yes, Laurent. LAURENT.
Beautiful, thank you. That's gonna help out everybody listening on.
And if
So,
you are looking for, me on the campaign, it is my legal name. Laurent is a brand, so you'll see that Jessica Clark
Jessica Clark.
on the ballot.
Oh,
Right,
that's
okay.
a good. That's a good.
Yeah, I was going to
note.
say, we need to know that. Jessica
Yeah.
Clark or
Yeah.
Jess Clark, number 3 and 4. Is
Yeah,
that
so
what
Izzy is
you're-
3. Izzy Emick is number 3, and I am number 4.
All right, so we've got Jessica and Izzy both running tomorrow in the Rockwood School District here in the St. Louis area, and we need your votes to help them get in and kind of just bring it back to civility.
Yes. Yes.
It's crazy. So, I want to thank you for joining us today. What time we got here, guys? We
About
got
5 minutes left.
got about 5 more minutes. Okay. Is there anything else that you would like that we didn't cover the next 5 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just enjoying my life. I'm enjoying being a mom. I got 2 podcasts.
Okay.
And a radio show. The one is the Jessica Laurent Show, which is about, diversifying the Black narrative. So, we typically move as a monolith. We talk the same. We have the same culture, anything. I remember being a kid and being called, they would say, oh, you talk white, because I spoke proper English. And so just saying, like, that's not white. Like, my sister would say, you eat white people food. I'm like, what? It's just food.
So it's funny that you say that, because my little kids are, we first got them. They were 16 months old, and I'll never forget our first trip to Six Flags. It was maybe a week after we got them. And my daughter has the curliest hair in the world. Like, I'm talking, it is curly. Like, it is really curly. And we had no clue what to do. Like my sons, I just high and tight. Zip,
Of
zip,
course.
zip,
Yeah.
I just take it high and
Yeah.
tight. We were asking every Black family that we could find. You were talking about culture differences
so
and things.
funny.
I was like, we were literally
Excuse me?
stop at Six Flags, and we'd see their little girls' hair in these beautiful braids and these beads all over it. And like, where did you get that done? And so that had happened a few times. Like we actually got on a website called Chocolate Hair with Vanilla Care is the name of
That is so funny.
is the name of the website. And so we're on this website and we're literally meeting people and having, who's your braid? And they'd say, oh, well, we
Yeah.
live down here and we live over here. And finally we met this young lady at Eureka Days one time.
Nice.
And she did hair. And so she's telling us all about it and she does this. Well, a year went by. And all of a sudden, my wife recognizes her. She's the Amazon driver pulling up in our driveway.
Wow.
And she lives in downtown St. Louis. Well, ever since then, my daughter's probably 2 or 3 years old at the time. So since then, we have become friends with them. And she comes over all the time and does our daughter's hair. And, just to be able to, that wouldn't have happened if
Right.
if I didn't have Black kids.
Yeah.
And we do live in a relatively white, well, I shouldn't say relatively, it is a white community.
Oh, yeah.
And so we, without knowing it, and I'm a pastor of a church, like it's not something that we want to happen, but it just happens, this separation or this segregation, if you will, of places. And it's not even necessarily people.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it's just,
It is.
for whatever reason, we live in an all white area. And,
Right.
and it just happens that
Something
way.
she said earlier that you guys may not have caught, but I caught it just because I know, is when she was telling the story about her and her husband going to welfare or whatever, she said, "Lady, I'm from a state street."
Yeah.
Right.
Like I know what that means.
Minnesota.
You do when you go to South City, you don't want to be on a street named after a state.
Facts.
If
Yes.
you look like me.
Okay.
That's what we were taught.
Yeah.
Right? And so I would tell the kid, do not go down. If you're in South City, do not go on a street named Tennessee
Okay,
or
Minnesota, Miami, don't do it.
So
Don't do
I
it.
knew what you meant.
Yeah.
Bro, I live on a state street, bro. We're not that bad.
No, it's getting better, okay?
Yeah.
Gentrification.
Yeah.
So diversifying the black narrative is like, yeah, we may live in different places, but that why does one thing have to be black or
doesn't.
white or
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Like let me just live. Like let my
Right.
kids just eat sushi and whatever they want to eat. So, but we talk a lot about black politics and just having a different narrative
Right.
around what you see in the media and how we can it's really empowerment. It's like how do we take like the success sequence of going to school first and then getting an education and then getting married and then having babies.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
so different examples of what you see, because when you're in the community, you see the Cardi B's of the world and the rappers and the basketball players. It's like you just need another route to wealth, and there
Right.
are different routes. So we explore politics and just kind of reversing the narrative that's out there. But the other one, that's my heart, thriving in relationships after abuse. It initially was dating after abuse, but thriving in relationships after abuse. I wanted to focus more on the relationship because the dating thing got super ghetto. So, but after abuse,
Right.
you have these insecurities and these scars and these toxic traits, and you have to heal yourself. And then we want people to complete us.
Right.
You want to go into a relationship all broken, and you're supposed to complete me, and I don't
Right.
understand why you're not fixing me. This is your job, and it's like you don't need to be somebody's job.
Right.
Like you need to be whole. You need to be whole when you go into there. This you need to be 100%. Somebody needs to make you 200%. So really just talking about my journey and how I became, went from broken to really
That's
placing
great.
those pieces back together.
Well, man, I mean, I usually say, man, I am so honored that you came today. And I pray that you are elected tomorrow.
Yes.
And that would be awesome. And so make sure you hit the polls tomorrow in the St. Louis area for the Rockwood School District. Make sure you check number 3 and number 4 especially.
Yes.
Miss Jess Clark is what you'll see on the ballot, and Jess Laurent
Yes.
through social media and her, I guess your brand name, so to speak. And so, what radio station are you on?
Real Talk 93.3.
Okay, 93.3. So make sure that you check her out on there as well. Yeah. And that's going to be the close of our podcast tonight.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
And
This was delicious.
Thank you so much, Jess. I appreciate you being here, and we'll try to get you out of here so you can get back to your little girls.
All right.
Amen. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Check us out on Spotify and iTunes. Tomorrow, the podcast will be on there. God bless.
You've been listening to the Man Up God's Way podcast. Visit us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, and our website at manupgodsway.com.